yeah, thank you everybody for coming on the farm tour.
I met Jake Tacketh on the last day of the Mayan calendar, the 21st of December 2012. And at the time, we were both living on the Front Range of Colorado, which is the Denver Boulder metro area. And we had many great adventures in farming and permaculture over there. And he eventually moved over here to the western slope and started this farm that he's given us a tour of here. And we followed along a few years later when we found a great deal on our farm here currently. To give you some geological context of where this is taking place, we're on the western slope of the Colorado Rockies on the western side of the Continental Divide. This is the Utah Desert, and we are here, and this is the Grand Mesa, and that's where all the snow accumulates in the wintertime. Though we barely get any snow down here on the valley floor, there is upwards of 12 feet of snow piling up on that mesa, which provides irrigation water for all the agriculture that's going on down here in this valley. My location right here is about 5,400 feet in elevation. Jake is about 900 feet higher and about 5 miles as the crow flies to the west of me.
So yeah, thank you everybody for coming on the farm tour, and thank you for teaching this workshop here. It's been awesome.
He's talking to Trevor Warmendal, who was giving a workshop on natural cheese making through his Sour Milk School. There are links in the description for all of his resources, and it was an amazing adventure and experience. I'll do a full video coming up here pretty soon, giving an overview of what was covered in that workshop and hopefully providing some inspiration for cheesemakers out there.
To just kind of get my mind blown and get inspired of how I can integrate this information here. For the farm tour, I guess there's a lot of different things going on here, but I'll try to generalize right now, and then we can hone in on different aspects of the operation. And if there's aspects of it you want to know more about, we can dive deeper into those zones. We're trying to approach this in a holistic way. We're trying to approach this in a regenerative way, and I put that in air quotes because I feel like everybody's saying regenerative these days. It's regenerative this, regenerative that. Nobody really knows what that is still. We're still kind of defining that, I think, as a culture. We're trying to discover what it means for us to be a regenerative farm. What we've come to so far in that is the fact that we want to create a resilient farm that regenerates itself and weans itself off of external inputs. The effect we're looking for is that everything that we put here in place is like starting to roll the ball downhill. Once it's rolling, it has its own momentum, and that momentum is propelled not by us fueling it with inputs, but by natural ecology. That's how we're approaching regenerative farming. And we've had successes with that, we've had failures, and we've learned a lot. And overall, we feel like it's been highly successful. This is a system that I feel, and I've seen it be scalable, replicatable, and it's also profitable. We're doing this and we're operating in the green. So for a small farm to be essentially operating in the green, to me is a really good indicator, and to be able to uphold these these beliefs in regenerating the soil, building soil, fostering biodiversity. We're taking care of a riparian waterway. You'll see all the things we're doing, the things that we're prioritizing. And essentially, in the process of taking care of this ecosystem the way that we want to, and creating that regenerative, self-propelled motion, all these products are spilling out of it along the way, almost like byproducts of going towards that larger goal. And those products would be beef, pork, milk, fruits, nuts, and berries. So instead of thinking of ourselves as a dairy farm or a beef operation or a hog farm or an orchard, we're thinking of ourselves as custodians of an ecosystem and we're just capitalizing on the low input products that come out of that on its own. And there's challenges to that, but overall it's been highly successful. So I'd love to walk you around and show you some of the aspects of that operation, and we'll focus in, of course, on the cattle and dairy, but along the way we'll talk a little bit about water management. We're doing somewhat of like a permaculture water management system, swales and berms and alleyways, that whole concept, but we're taking it and we've changed the initial concept a lot to fit it for our operation. And so I'll show you how we've adapted those permaculture concepts to scale and to support livestock, essentially. Feel free to check them out and look at them. They're really simple. I dug these mechanically with a skid steer. My off-farm job is I actually consult and engineer these for larger ranches all over the world. So that's my off-farm job.
Now Jake's off-farm job is working with Restoration Agriculture Development, which is Mark Shepard's company, to install large-scale earthworks and permaculture water catchment systems and food forests on ranches, and they've done a lot of work in the corporate sphere too, some large campuses of major auto manufacturers and things like that. They keep pretty busy installing these systems around the United States, and that takes Jake away to do massive installs on 1,500 acre farms, and there are some even larger projects than that coming up, but that's what keeps him busy when he's not around here. Mark Shepard is the author of the STUN method, which is strategic total utter neglect. And so the idea being, if you install enough species in the ecosystem you're trying to nurture, eventually those that are strong will survive and procreate, and your system will be populated by genetics that are suited for your actual conditions and the ebbs and flows within it. And so we jokingly talk here a little bit about killing trees.
Mark Shepard has killed more trees than anybody I know. And he has the most abundant established food forest of anybody I know. So it seems like to succeed in creating a food forest, you have to kill a lot of trees. And so I'm here to kill trees.
Here, this is kind of like my laboratory here. So when I go do this for clients, I do a very specific approach and do custom water management systems with agroforestry and rotational grazing patterns. Here, I just want to try everything and make every mistake in the book and just observe the effects of different ways you can work with the land. So as I walk you around, I'm happy to show you the things that work, the things that don't work, the things that I'm confused by. There's a lot going on when you start just tinkering, and with the intention, instead of with the intention being a direct thing you're going to extract from it, the intention being just to make gentle motions first and observe the responses, make stronger motions, observe those responses, and eventually set a pattern in place and observe the long-term result of those patterns. So in this field we're in right now, I set in a pattern of about 13 swales. They're not on contour, they're actually all pitched at a 1% grade going that way, and that's because, as you'll see later in the walk, that's a wetter area on that side of the farm. The idea is to really gently convey water away from the areas that were traditionally wet and equally distribute that water across the entire landscape. When I moved here, we were standing here, we'd be looking at knapweed, sagebrush, and desert species. This is not a conventionally irrigated piece of property. We're not looking at fast annual crops, and we're not looking at shallow-rooted annual grasses. What we're looking for are deep-rooted perennials and plants that don't mind digging deep and mining for water and nutrients. And by getting, this is our 8th year on this property.
So it was dry and dusty before?
Oh my God, you can't, Bob, you saw it.
It's like across the street.
Or beyond where we're camping?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. That side where above that last swale, and it's going to be the same here. I'll show you the line. You know, the line where I stopped. What I'm saying is the first 5 or 6 years we had no real dependable water on the system. I've been leasing that next property over where the dairy cows are now, which gives me some control over irrigation upstream from me because that property has water rights attached to it. That's been really helpful the past 2 years, or 2 or 3 years now. Getting to actually have a small amount, but actually having some control over when I can send water down here. And we've been blessed with really good snowpack and very good years recently. But we're getting a lot, it's kind of like a multi-species kind of, it doesn't really know what it is yet. It's getting more water than it historically has, but not enough for it to become lush. And I'd love to see, you know, a few years from now how this continues to move. You can see as we get closer to that valley structure, it greens up again. You see where that swale goes uphill and then back out? So what these swales are, you're in a giant interactive topographical map. And these swales are all not purely on contour, but close enough to contour that this is a topo map. So that's a valley where it goes in and back out. And of course, any water surface runoff happening up here is consolidating right there. Or maybe people think it's like, it's definitely not the normal way to look at things, but for us livestock in general, not all of them, like our dairy cows are kind of different for us. But in general, the free-ranging livestock you see around the farm is different than the livestock you've probably encountered at a lot of other farms. They're kind of scrappy, and they're not really like for human consumption. They're here because they have a different purpose. And we don't impede their genetic progress. We're not here to basically ensure that every single one of them survives, or even that every one of them looks great, so that when you see them, you're like, wow, that looks great, good job. What I want is like these scrappy, hardy, naturalized animals that are going to, like I said, when we were defining regenerative farming, which nobody's really done yet, we're creating a self-regenerating, self-propelling system here. These turkeys, they're gonna lose a lot of their young, a lot of them already have, but also that one in the back with the 4, those 4 made it to a point where they're pretty darn sturdy now. The other one has younger ones, she'll still probably lose a few, but what we're doing is we're asking nature to do what it does best, and we're not going to try to bend it to our will. You know, I don't think that turkeys and chickens and guineas and ducks and geese at this scale are profitable enough to really fuck with. I think what you can do with them is allow them to naturalize, and the benefits they provide your farm far outweigh what you would get for them dressed out. For example, like this year, the Valley had a historical grasshopper pilgrimage where they all came at once, and it was like about as close to like biblical as I could imagine it. I mean, the properties I run where we don't have my turkeys and chickens and guinea fowl, I suffered incredible weight loss in my pastures. I'd put the cows in and it would look like I'd been irrigating it, and it'd look like a pasture. You'd put them in and start walking around. All the blades of grass were down to just stems. The alfalfa and sweet clover would all be stripped. I mean, the grasshoppers literally cleaned it, took all the palatable stuff. And all the trees I planted on those properties too, completely defoliated. So we do have grasshoppers here, but it's not nearly as bad as the other properties. These free-ranging birds have done heavy lifting this year. They also do heavy lifting on the parasite load, and I notice a big swing in that cycle. So like, for example, the parasites in pigs or dogs or any of the animals that poop around this farm, obviously there's a parasite cycle where the parasites will hit the ground and eventually and make their way into another animal to reproduce. And what the free-range poultry do is they actually, they're unaffected by those parasites that affect mammals. So they're able to clean those up. To them, it's like protein. The thing is, they're so preoccupied right now with grasshoppers, they're not paying any attention to that. And so there's a swing in the cycle. And so we do have a little bit of a parasite load right now on the farm. However, once the frosts come, the grasshoppers are gone, and we get back into more of a winter scenario, they're looking for food. And at that point, we are gonna have 0 parasites on the farm. So there's these swings that I notice every year that it goes in cycles. And instead of getting all stressed out and like, let's bomb everything with ivermectin and kill all our dung beetles and like go on, that would be detrimental in the long run. The thing to do that's more sustainable in my mind is pay attention to it, make sure it doesn't get to a point where your parasite load is dangerous to your animals, but also allow the cycles to self-complete, because then everything gets more efficient every time. And your animals are being trained to these cycles instead of you interacting and basically untraining everything. So
And requiring your care at every stage, every year.
exactly, it's a hands-off approach, but not like hands-off like I don't do anything. Hands-off like I'm very much monitoring it and very aware of it all, but also trying to allow things to run their course, because the goal is for this to eventually run itself. Stuff, it's like inevitable there's going to be this like parasite cycle, and everybody deals with that in different ways. So like we don't use ivermectin because of what's really important to us is dung beetles, and dung beetles are annihilated by ivermectin. It's just like game over for them, and to the point where like a lot of big ranches are actually trying to re-inoculate with dung beetles now, because they're realizing how much they're losing by not having them. And we have a really good population of them, and so we're like, why would we'd rather see I don't want to say we don't want to see a parasite load, but I'd rather see a natural cycle with parasites exist that stays within reason, within healthy parameters, than see nothing at all and be basically nuking the farm with ivermectin.
Now, this is just a small slice of what's going on Jake's farm there at Cedar Springs, and you can check out some of Stefano Creatini's videos showing other tours from years past of Jake's place. I'll put links down in the comments below, and we'll put a card up here so you can click right over and watch one of those. But what Jake is doing is remarkable, considering the fact that our high desert situation here only provides about 12 to 15 inches of rainfall a year. And because of the earthworks and the terraforming that he's done in his place, the way he's rotationally grazing his beef herds through there, and the over 15,000 trees he's planted at this point, he's managed to raise the water table on his entire place, which used to just be dry desert, and now has springs just spontaneously erupting out of the ground. We'll go back and do another tour up there once things start kicking off for the season, and have a few more conversations with Jake, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of that.